do to like say, hey, it's not that scary, come on in, the water's fine, and here's a little bit about it, will listen completely differently and they appreciate it differently.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is amazing. I discovered you on Instagram. What now?
No, it's okay. We know that we have to do Instagram, but none of us like doing it.
Nobody likes it.
I don't know. I think Sonia
She enjoys it way more than she had.
No, I don't like it. It's just because like it's visual. You have to have Instagram these days. But all of us are like, I would, like for about a few years we forgot we even had it. So there's like the first post and then months until, yeah.
Well, then I'm glad I caught you just as you decided to do it. You have to tell me now exactly, because I saw something very interesting, but tell me about your group.
Funny.
Sorry,
You're the Freestyle Orchestra, and that means what?
Well, it's designed to mean anything.
Yeah.
Yes, because like it's very specifically not called a circus orchestra or a stunt orchestra or anything like that, because it is exploring like anything that comes up. Essentially, the key ingredient of a musician or an artist in the orchestra is just an open mind and curiosity, because we do run down every rabbit hole, and these guys know. And so it's essentially, I grew up in Australia. My family wasn't musical. I accidentally played the violin. That's quite a long story, but so I was going to concerts, and inevitably at times become a bit disengaged with what was happening, and imagine all the things that I would do with, like, the concert hall is a huge space, and most people use maybe 10% of the bottom of it. So I thought maybe there could be other things happening, and inevitably I'd come out with my program filled with notes of what I might do. But, at that age as a teenager, if you had your dream team, I wouldn't have known what to do. So it took, like 10, 15 years of cutting my teeth on other projects, learning from, many mentors and things. Still learning, of course, never stop. And so then, about 5 years ago, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm ready to try to make this work. And I'd been mentioning it to people along the way that I met that, I thought that, just had something. It doesn't have to be acrobatic or, it's just something like, we have people that they can stand there and play, but there can be all sorts of things going on around them, and you still watch them. So it's that little something, and so then 5 years ago we started workshops, and here we are. But
so you're all classically trained musicians, and you all play different instruments. So what are your instruments that you play?
I play cello.
Yeah.
And been playing cello since the last 23 years.
You also play pop.
And the rest is like, the rest are stuff that are like not coming from the classical world.
You use a loop machine.
Edo here is helping me out. I don't know if you can hear him. I do a bit of like
describing
vocal
yourself
percussion.
is always hard. Yeah,
vocal percussions. Also, recently during lockdown, I started researching a thing that's very interesting for me. That's electronical sound and electronic instruments. And in that realm, we tried stuff with a loop machine. I also found that there was it was helpful for me from the university. There was a course in looping with Marie Spielman. And I found it very useful as well. So quite exciting, actually. But yeah, my main instrument is cello. I sing. I never sung in our shows.
I've seen you singing. That's true.
You've done magic.
I've done magic. It's been a passion of mine for a while. Yeah, like magic tricks.
He lifts people.
He likes flung walks on the beach and sunset
and good food. Yes.
But Tony, he's the one who like lifts people all the time. Like anytime you need someone to chuck somebody or like
He is the strongest man, not in the universe, but in our crew for sure.
In our group,
he's the bass.
I'm the bass,
Mm-hmm.
Although I play, that's our bass player.
I'm the bass player.
Okay, and so bass player as in bass guitar or bass or
Contrabass.
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 Definitely my musical role in this orchestra is to fill the gaps. Like
Oh,
basically,
okay.
I studied double bass, but I'm also a composer and a multi-instrumentalist. And I usually come to ensembles by saying, what does the music need? What do you guys want to have? And if it's possible for me to do it, I usually do it. In the last show, I was doing piano, double bass, electronics. Again, fill in the gaps.
Oh, okay.
And aspiring.
Yes, ninja.
Everything which has to do with the floor physically, it's nice to me. I tried aerials like the guys there. Nice? No. So that was about it.
Oh, okay. But you also look like the cool guy, the chilled
do?
one.
Oh,
The chilled one.
It's the Italian.
I think I am the clumsiest and least cool person I know. This made my day. I'm super happy right now. Thank you so much.
Okay, and then the girls, what are you doing? What are you playing?
I'm Shanda. I'm a pianist, and I'm very breakable compared to all of these young people here. So I am in charge of things like press and writing texts and presenting at conferences and things like that. And I also do some aerial. So I do like aerial sear wheel and aerial silks, and I'll occasionally someone will climb up on me too. I'll occasionally do a bit of a fire spit, but most of the time I'm at the piano.
Okay.
I usually
And
prefer
Sonia?
all of us.
This is not one.
She's
also a professor, like a
PhD.
Exactly.
I'm an adjunct lecturer.
But you're a doctor.
Yeah, it's true. I have a doctorate in historical musicology.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I'm at the end of it. Yeah.
So, and Sonia, what do you do?
I my main thing I've been a violinist since I was really young, and then my first circus discipline was fire performance, and that's not really healthy. So then I got into aerials, yeah, and I did gymnastics as a kid, but I broke everything. Then I had some time off, but I still I think it was a good base for
So and now, so do you have the concerts now? What is the main feature? Is it the music or is it the movement?
Last year, actually, we did say that we always wanted to focus on our training, and we have been doing that this particular year and a half, actually. But before that, the main focus was always creating an entertaining, what was it?
Integrating
and engaging show.
Sure. Yeah. Where the music leads the movement.
Exactly.
Right? So the main thing for us is always going to be the music, but we have been experimenting with times when the movement can lead the music, where we create music to go with movements that we see. So we're trying to play with doing it the other way around too.
Yeah, originally it always went from the music. So it was like, we have this piece, and then it would be like, I see movement too. Yeah, and then it was like, but there's like gaps here. What do you guys think? And then it was a collective thing. We always, it was a collective thing when we did.
We're like, who could we pass this to so someone can go do this, and we could take this line so that
which
we
part can be borrowed by someone else. So that's
what?
Yeah.
It's still a violin, but it's the soloist. You can't split it up.
For the first few, at least for the first 5 years, we stay very true to the music. The only thing we may do is that somebody might, for example, we did a choreography to Ravel's Tzigane, which is a solo violin work. And we shared that solo around the whole ensemble because everybody can play solo. So it's got a bunch of variations, and each person took a variation. And as the music got crazier and crazier, so did the acrobatics. So it's very much, it's not to do a flip for no reason. It's very much, we take this music and we try to support it. We always say, we try to enhance the emotions physically. Because if you go back to it, the original thing is to, my family's not musical. How can I present this in a way that with the few lines of program notes, with lighting, with costuming, with physicality, we can communicate information about the piece that's embedded in the performance, so that it may be a little more clear, so they don't have to study and things like this.
But this,
what she means is that musically we tried mostly, we go into the direction of rearranging a piece of music. We don't compose a new piece on, if we play the Tzigane by Ravel, the notes stay all the same. What happens mostly, as Tony was saying before, when it froze, we move the parts to people who are available to play, depending on what the choreography is happening. Because if the main soloist, in this case Sonia, is being lifted up and is flying at the moment, she can't really play the violin. So who can cover the violin part, because the piece still has to be performable. And the idea is that when you listen to it without looking at it, it still sounds like the original piece of music.
Yeah.
So it's more of a puzzle work.
But it's not just classical music. I would say we do primarily classical music, and that's certainly where we started. But we've done, jazz, we've done musical, we've done electro swing, we've done a lot of different kinds of folk styles. We like a lot of other kinds of music, so we do a lot of other kinds of music that it really kind of runs the gambit. Yeah.
You still make it. It still makes sense, if I can put it that way. So it's not just randomly using acrobatics to entertain. It's really to communicate the music in a different way. Is that what you're doing?
It's very specific. Like we are all very specific as to what we feel fits a piece of music, and it's not about putting all the tricks on stage.
We know what we don't do. Yeah.
I mean, even if we could do a crazy trick, if it didn't fit that particular piece of music, there's no reason to put it in there.
The idea is more that I think all of us feel a bit that the physical act of kind of playing music with the physicality that's involved in performance is something that's a little bit suppressed in classical teaching, right? I mean, we talk a lot about the intellectuality of classical music, but the whole idea that we use our bodies, that it's an embodied thing that we do, is something that really gets underestimated, I think, or overlooked, or just underplayed. And so the idea is that music and dance have always gone together. Music and movement are just completely intertwined, and that's something we've lost a little bit sight of, I think, in classical music. So this is kind of going to the other side of the spectrum and saying, okay, we see or hear music with movement in it in so many instances. Not all. There's a lot of pieces we won't touch.
Yeah.
But a lot of pieces really seem to have movement embedded in it that we can imagine very easily. And so how can we convey that to the audience?
Well, I think this is a wonderful, wonderful way. And I think especially in this time of the pandemic, where we all have this question, well, I had this question, why is it that artists are not appreciated? Why are you in this situation? And I think in a way it is this distance between the audience and the musicians. And I actually love, for example, when I'm somewhere in a park and there are young musicians just, playing and being a bit free, not this concert setup where everything is a bit more formal, but this very informal way, and the interaction between them. And I always have been saying that I think this is the way to connect with people who don't necessarily go to concert halls, who don't necessarily go to the opera, but that they are introduced to the music in a different way, to touch them in their senses in a different way, And this is what you are describing now is actually what I think is amazing. This is because, like you say, sound has a visual or an imagination as well, and you are then bringing that imagination forward, basically.
Yeah, and I think audiences are. You're a human performing for other humans, so unless it feels right to you, it's not going to hit. It's not going to connect, and people sort of, I don't know, maybe look down on people who play on the street, but in fact, if you can stop people in their tracks, get them to listen, and then pay you, that is going to work in the concert hall too. So we actually play a lot on the street to try things out. We've played street festivals as well.
You have been hiring people playing on the street.
I met Tony playing on the street.
That's
really
true.
Yeah.
I was practicing.
That was her hiring process. This is unfortunately very, very true.
No, but I love it. I think this is, I really think this is a good way to connect. And I also always stop. I find it interesting. And I also think that a concert hall and a very formal affair is sometimes intimidating for people who don't understand the music, you know, and something like this.
Growing up. Yeah, I came from that. I was like, oh, this is like church or something. But having said that, like we have nothing against that either. We all play in very traditional concerts too. And actually that's quite fun to do every so often, to be part of something huge where there's 100 people and you can barely hear yourself. It's also amazing. And we're not advocating that that stops at all. It's simply another way for people to engage in this music that we really believe in. And often, like we have one of our guys is a breakdancer and a violinist, and we find that incorporating these things, you know, if they make sense to us, does increase our, you know, we do reach people that may not otherwise come into a concert hall for those reasons that you just mentioned. Yeah.
I think I agree with you that I mean the concert hall will still be the place to go, but it's to get the people to go, to get the people to be interested in going. I think this is a way to do it, you know, to connect with a different audience than, you know, the ones that are sort of in a tradition to go to the concert hall. I mean, I come from a city where, well, I come from a town in South Africa where we didn't have a theater. And we were not exposed to all this. So, you know, for me, it's also something that I had to learn to appreciate and to learn to understand music a little bit more, which I still don't. But people like you help me. You know? This type of thing that I get to learn to understand music a little bit better. Yeah.
Well, and I think the classical music tradition, I mean, as we study it now, the whole concert going thing is not something that's been around since the dawn of time. I mean, it's really quite a recent phenomena where we built like these temples, and there is something kind of about a ritual to it, which I really like. But it's also it's a ritual, and if it doesn't speak to people, then that's a problem. And I also think that we should be evolving with the time too. We don't need to do the things the same way that they did in the early 20th century or in the late 19th century.
I get inspired by Brian.
Yeah,
a lot.
Yeah. You want to talk about who Brian is?
I should maybe elaborate. Well, Brian is a modern day troubadour, as he describes himself and others as well. Basically, Brian Benner is the full name. Yes.
Oh, I know him. I know him. Yeah. Well, I photographed him in his window, and he sang for me. He sang for me through the window.
It is amazing. He's so inspiring. So all of I really got inspired by Brian watching what he does, and it made sense to me because yes, I recognize his music and his art, but I didn't think it can be possible to mash it up in a non how do you say, outside of the
canonical
performance, canonical traditional music hall.
You mean what he does with Schubert?
What he does with Schubert,
with the Errol Kings band.
With the Errol Kings, yes.
Yes, sorry, trying to be specific, but my friends are helping.
And he's on it. I mean, he's constant, and he's doing it, and he's exploring and creating, and it's amazing.
Very well recently. He was talking about a project that he does, which is a late night leader album, and he has 3 really different acts on, and it's a little bit. We just started our own festival, actually. It's tomorrow. And it's a little bit what we're trying to do with that too. And he says you meet someone within their taste, and then you show them something completely different that they would not otherwise see. And he's actually performing at the festival tomorrow too. It's
really?
Yeah.
Oh, will you tell him that you spoke to me? Because I spoke to him a while ago as well. He's so lovely. Yeah.
Sure.
He is.
Oh, he's wonderful. But yeah, this is also something that I speak to musicians about, and it is like this educating your audiences and doing things, giving them something that that they don't necessarily expect or that they're not used to, but putting that in to open up our minds a little bit to what is possible and you know what is available. And you as musicians, you know all this because you're the ones studying the music and you're the ones knowing what is possible and how to do it. But you wanted to say something.
I mean, I would say like.
No, sorry. What is your?
I'm Eduardo. I think you just said it. It's really this thing of trying to communicate with the audience and trying to show them a bit more of just the music, which is something which unfortunately does not happen that often in a concert setting. Like you can buy the program and you can read the program notes. What doesn't happen that often is that the person who is about to play for you or just play for you, however they prefer, they talk to you about why they chose this music.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
They like it. They learned it when they were 14. They're used like, why did you choose out of the immensity of music we have available for classical music? Thinking as a pianist, there is so much. Why did you choose to perform for me exactly this piece? Why tonight? What does it mean to you? Because you are the person playing still. Or what did it mean back then, if you know it? And there is a lot more than just playing the music. And that is a thing which I think we should do a bit more. And that also makes a difference because it makes people really understand.
Yes.
Oh, that's what it was all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say too that I don't think that there's really a lack of curiosity on the part of audience. I think that's one thing that we think, oh, well, people just aren't interested or whatever.
No, absolutely.
I think when I take people who don't generally go to concerts, to classical concerts, they will always ask, like, well, what is this about? Explain it to me. So I think people are looking for kind of a key into this kind of very closed, very elite seeming world.
Yeah, we need to welcome them.
So we need, I think anything we can do to like say, hey, it's not that scary. Come on in, the water's fine. And here's a little bit about it. People listen completely differently and they appreciate it differently.
On the other hand, it's so valuable to listen to what non-classical music attendees think about things as well. I find that almost more valuable.
Oh, that is so refreshing. You learn so much. Yeah, absolutely.
Because it is like, I would say rather than like, I sort of like the word educating audiences, but connecting with them and being approachable so that it is exchange because they're an equal part in the process. If they're not there, then you know what's happening. It is for me, it's more an exchange, and the more you can do to facilitate that. And I think like in many ways as well, you know, even without really meaning to in the beginning, we're sort of like questioning what function an orchestra has in a society as well. It's like, I mean, I just did I was working with the Deutsche Kammerphilharmonie Bremen recently, and they have like their orchestra is set up in a school which was a disadvantaged area. And so the kids could come and see rehearsals, and you know, they won one of the biggest social prizes in Germany for that project. The founders of the orchestra set up with their own money. We're not quite in a position to do something like that, but if you compare like what our season looks like is instead like we don't have a concert hall that's our own. We have festivals that we go to every year that we attend or that we make ourselves. Our first one is tomorrow, and it's just being able to meet people where they are rather than expecting them to come. My favorite quote from Winnie the Pooh: "You can't always sit in the corner of the forest and wait for people to come to you. You have to go to them sometimes."
I was many years ago. I was an artistic research fellow in Banff, Canada, at their music program, and they basically would give us scholarships to go make art for 3 months. It was amazing, and and we had like different concert venues we could perform things in, whatever we wanted, and the only rule was we had to talk to the audience. Because that's an area of Canada that doesn't come from this tradition. They're kind of, until they hit oil, it was a rather poor area. And so the people didn't grow up like, you know, with this code for classical music. And it was terrifying. I remember the first time I went out and I was playing, I think a 2-piano forehand, you know, program, and talking about Debussy, I think on Blanc et Noir. And I thought it was going to be a disaster. And I talked for maybe 2 minutes, and people were so thankful and just so, and it convinced me at that point that this is the only way to go.
I still struggle with talking, so I try and do it through like physical stuff instead.
Yeah. Yes.
For me, just to go on the other side of the belt, because we were also saying, yeah, but it's also very refreshing and important for us to listen to the opinion of unbiased people. Because the thing is that when you study music for the amount of time we've been studying music, and you listen to so many opinions and you read so many books or listen to so many things, you start developing kind of an automatism that, oh, yeah, you know what this music means because you know what it feels like. You just have all the reference in your mind. And it's very, very good to really listen to someone who has no idea about nothing and say, oh, this music to me brings sometimes it brings a completely different picture. And that's also interesting to see. I've been running actually kind of a social experiment in the last month as a composer in which I play extreme contemporary music to people who have no idea about music without telling them anything, which means I play both Zweite Wiener Schule, if this is like people music from Schoenberg or the Albanberg, to people who have no idea about it, or John Cage, and then ask them, what do you think about it? And then if they want, I explain to them what it meant back then. And it is fascinating, also because sometimes you don't get the answer you were expecting to. The last thing I tried was with post-chromatic music and microphone music, because I've been into that, I'm sorry.
Makes my hair stand.
And there's been so many people in which I was honestly thinking nobody's gonna like it, because of course they won't. Surprisingly, a lot of people were like, oh no, it sounds like an unresolved question, but I kind of like it. This is the thing I received the most. Like if I have to make one answer out of all the, I think 20 or something, it was, it's going somewhere, but I don't know where it's going. And it feels like it didn't went there where it needs to go.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's cool.
Yeah.
Next time we need to put that in a show. We know what to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it also gives, and this is the thing to the composer in me, it gives me a lot of power because as a composer, I work with how people react naturally to music. It's way easier to work with how people naturally feel rather than trying to make them feel what I want them to. Which means if I know, hey, like, use this color, people usually tend to react in this way. That is useful because if I want to create this atmosphere for a scene or for a movie or for my piece of music, I know what to do. So that's my elaboration of why it's very, very important to never lose contact with people who don't have the education we have and know what they do, because it's important to know your audience and to learn to see not only with your eyes of a educated musician, whatever, but also with the eyes and the ears of people who don't have the same education as you have.
Which changes, of course, where you are in the world too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No, I think this is what I gathered through this time is that you are so focused on doing it, and and the standard is so high, and the pressure is so high that that I think you forget that the people who are listening to you. I always think that. My son and daughter are ballet dancers, and they're so critical on themselves. And then they sometimes would say, oh, did you see this mistake? And no, I didn't. I see the whole picture. I don't look at these technical details. And I think because you're training so hard and because the pressure is so high, that I think that sometimes it's the focus of you on what you're doing that you sort of miss that we're just there and enjoying it. I actually found this that I sometimes at some of the musicians I came up for, I ask, would you play something in the window, your instrument? And some were actually very hesitant because they were thinking the pressure from people who will be seeing them, not the audience, but their colleagues who will be seeing or will be hearing on Facebook or Instagram, whatever. And I would just be so happy if they sing or play, and I would say, oh, wow, this is amazing. And then when they check on my phone and say, no, I made a mistake here, I made a mistake there. And for me, it wasn't, for me, it was just this moment. So yeah, I think you are absolutely right. It is, yes.
Just to that very, very briefly, they've actually done studies about this, because you're absolutely right. As classical musicians, we're trained to be very self-critical and only hear mistakes and listen as a kind of recording engineer almost has to. And we tend to think that that's what audiences want, but they've done studies on kind of new audiences, extensive ones. And one of the most important criteria is not, I mean, they want it to be good, quality, of course, but their idea of good is very broad compared to us, much more tolerance. And what's really important to most audiences, especially new audiences, was that if the people looked like they were having a good time on stage, if they looked like they were enjoying themselves, that contributed a lot more to them feeling like, oh, I want to come back and do this again, which I think none of us, as we're trained in classical music, were ever thought to focus on.
No, no, not really. I'm asking to all of us because we've been all together there. There was in Australia, we have been all together once in Australia to a circus festival. And one of the things which we have been watching was also, there were a lot of seminaries about physical performance and circus arts and everything. One of them was the art of emceeing, or the art of like how to moderate for a show. And then the same person who did the seminar was actually moderating a youth show for the actual festival. And I was there on stage, we all were, I don't remember the name. If you remember the name, please tell it to me. But he basically went on stage with this sentence and it stuck into my head so strong. And he was talking to the audience, not to us. Look, at the end of the day, we all here want just to have a great time. Like, we want to perform for you and enjoy it. You want to come and enjoy the show. So why don't we have a great time all together? And people blasted with huge applause. And we're like, that makes so much sense.
I mean,
that is true.
I felt like when in the conservatory style training, I would really try very hard. We had performance recital exams, and I would invite everyone I knew, and I would write notes about why I chose those pieces I chose, and I would pack out the joint, because I felt like that's part of my responsibility, is to communicate why I love this music and to like bring people into this place. This is in the Sydney Conservatory, and inevitably I'd get back my sheets, and it would be like nothing about the atmosphere or anything, and I just felt that I was getting set up to push the right buttons in the right order. And essentially the concert hall space as a soloist, it wasn't a place where I felt I could give everything I wanted to give. So I was like, how can I create the conditions around me where I do feel like I can? Freestyle Orchestra. That is it.
That was your answer to this question.
That was my answer. Because if you're on stage, like we train together, we sweat together, we like picking each other like, a lot. I mean, sometimes we put our lives in each other's hands, and when then you play the music together like that, that is a whole other level of and then when you're on stage with those people, like it's like your crew, like you can give more than you could by yourself. Plus, the other thing is, like, we do so many things, we don't have time to feel nervous about the music we're playing, because you're like, oh, what do I have to do next? Like, we did the biggest show we've ever attempted 2 years ago in Australia. None of us were nervous because there was too much other stuff to think about.
And I don't think, I mean, if you hear Meninya's, if you hear the piece that we did, at least for me, like 2 years ago, I have a physical reaction to it now. Even if I sit and listen to it, I see it completely differently and hear it differently.
I make a contract with for the same reason. Yes. But it just brings it back.
So I do think that it affects our understanding of the music and our relationship to it too. And that's a really beautiful thing for us, selfishly, I guess.
Yes, I also experienced it the other way, that like I was performing for a ballet, and it was like many times it was just me and the dancers, and they sent the DVD ahead so that I could learn the movements and stuff and know where everything went. But they actually sent this was Houston Ballet, they sent 2 different dancers for the show, and the way they danced totally influenced how I interpreted the music. So that was just really interesting for me as well. It's like it does go both ways. And now more and more we're actually exploring it from the other side. Like we started with what we knew is the music and how to embody that, and now more and more we're playing around with what happens if the movement leads, or if they're both leading each other, or if there's improvised, or if we actually compose our own things to, like, maybe we do want to show a particular skill and we can't find a piece of music that really makes sense with it.
The right one. That happened to basically me and Tony have a thing that we usually do acrobatics together. He has a thing to back to the point, we put our lives in our hands. He has a thing which he throws me into a backflip, which is very scary for me, a bit less scary for him, but still, it takes 2 people to do it.
Scary.
It's good for me. It's true. What if I land and die?
Exactly.
It never happened so far. But basically, he wanted to create an act in which he uses a steer wheel, which is a prop. Basically, it's a giant wheel in which you can stand and spin and do things on. And he couldn't find the music for it. So he just went to me like, hey, I have these things which I can do on the steer wheel. Do you have an idea for a music in your head? And 2 weeks later, he had an act in which he was doing it and was playing the music for it as an explanation of, we have been doing music first for a long time, and now we are trying to go. So what if he has a movement and doesn't know what to do with it?
Yeah. What if
That's amazing.
Starts.
But listen, I think really your whole concept is fantastic, and I'm so glad that I now hear a bit more insight also in it. And I think, I predicted over this lockdown period, because also I spoke to many students in the time, and I do predict you young musicians will be you will create a new path in the music. I think you will, like this type of thing that you are doing. I think this will be something that will in the future be something that would be explored more. I really do think so. I think from this pandemic anyway, there will come many new things and many wonderful collaborations as well.
Yeah, and I was just going to add that, I think over the course of the 19th and 20th centuries, we did a lot of kind of separating different musical or artistic formats from each other, right? So there's like a place where you go to see ballet, and there's a place where you go to see modern art, a place where you go to see like a instrumental concert, and there's not always a lot of overlap between them anymore. I mean, I know a lot of even instrumental musicians who won't go to the opera or who don't go to the theater, like you guys.
No, I just go to the.
I also everything has their own like tiny audiences, and I think what we're trying to do a little bit, I think unconsciously, when what a lot of people I think are going to be doing is fusing different things back together.
Yeah.
That they
But
can learn.
if you think of it over this period, you saw a lot of musicians, for example, or artists started painting or started photography or doing other things as well. And this just, I think, as artists, you are very multifaceted. I think if you really think of it that way, it's not just music. There are other things that come with it as well. And I think it's this time where we artists just started exploring, because it's in you to give or to have, to create, to create, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, it just, for me, it just bugs me until I can put it on stage, and then I'm happy. And then, everyone's like, oh, why don't you take it on tour? I'm like, yeah, I know it works. Next thing now. It's a bad business model, I know.
It's a terrible business model.
I know.
But it's personal artistic growth.
We'll do all the growing first, and then we'll pick the best.
But now, so you have, what is now the lineup for you? How is your concerts? When do you have now concerts?
We just did 2 days at the Courtois these outdoor concerts, which was really, really lovely last week. And tomorrow we have the festival that we began.
Called the Secret Garden Festival, and it's essentially a lot. Basically, of course, it is this because we made it. But it's like taking all art forms out of where they usually are. For example, out of a concert hall, out of the pub, out of the computer screen, out of the circus tent, and putting them all together in the garden and allowing them to mix with each other. So this is just a little bit this year, because we, to start a festival in a pandemic is not the smartest idea, but we're like, let's just do it. And so it's ideally like we have very different acts after each other, and that they do the last few songs together. So really encouraging collaboration, planned collaboration, but also spontaneous. So if there's something happening on stage and there is an aerialist who feels like improvising something, then they're welcome to jump on the rig and do something. It's really seeing how things can influence each other and cross-pollinate in the one place, in an urban, it's a garden, but in an urban setting. But outdoors. Outdoors, yes, it's also. but yes, and this year it's also raising funds for youth mental health, which is quite close topic for quite a lot of the organizers. So.
Oh, okay.
And then we go and we go to Sicily.
Sicily.
The beginning of September.
Our friend that organizes a handstand.
To make music and do handstands for a handstand festival on the ocean, which will be really, really lovely.
Yeah.
Then we go and work.
Yes,
England.
then Tony and I, we are doing a musical in England for
nice.
a long-time collaborator of mine, Chloe Shirodi. It's with the UK Arts Council and it's been postponed about 5 times. So let's see.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's a story about the environment and essentially Greta Thunberg story, but a little bit mixed with puppets and fantastical characters as well.
Oh, okay.
Of puppetry and circus and musical. Yes, and
January.
Well,
and hopefully we were planning to go back to Australia for the circus festival, but probably that's not going to happen.
Not sure it's going to be a lot.
We haven't really planned the rest of it because right now it's just planning past October is.
Well, everything, I would just believe everything happens at the right time. So whatever is coming up and whatever is not coming up, it's going to happen at the right time.
And it's going to happen.
Or not, yeah.
But listen, this was now so lovely to talk to you. I'm very happy about the possibility to hear all of this from you. But
thank you for having us and for your interest in what we do. It's really
I think it's wonderful what you do. I would love to one day come and see a performance of yours. So keep me updated. And then and if ever something comes up and you would like to talk about it and have a sort of a just like this where you talk about what the act is about or what the music is about, we can do it, and then and you can always use it, because this is the idea, is that the artists use this platform for yourselves, for to let people understand what you are doing.
Thank you so much.
No, that's my pleasure, and have a lovely evening and all the best with the concert, and send my love to Brian.
Yes, we will do so.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.